Hello, my name is Ali Yousefi. Welcome to the Test Automation and EasyRepro series. In this edition of Automating EasyRepro, we're going to create a Azure DevOps Release Pipeline. We'll cover creating the release pipeline, creating an artifact trigger, a stage trigger. We'll have a demo, and we'll leave with references. Creating a release pipeline. A release pipeline is part of the continuous deployment or delivery process that we can put into place. As you see here, there's two main parts to the release pipeline. There is the artifacts, which are deployable components, and there are stages. Stages are a list of stages as shown here, and each stage includes jobs and tasks. So creating an artifact. An artifact can consist of build pipeline artifacts, source code, container registries, etc. Examples include release branches, drops from builds, container images, and NuGet feeds. Here you can see an example of choosing a build pipeline where you can choose the project and the source, which is the CI pipeline. And another example using a Git branch, where you might point to a releases branch to take bits or compiled solutions and move them across environments. Release pipelines allow us to have a continuous deployment trigger enabled. We can add branch filters. Also, we can build triggers off of pull request. Releases can also be scheduled on time intervals with multiple time intervals added, as shown here on the right. When working with stages in a release pipeline, we have three different types of jobs we can run. We have a agent job, we have a agentless job, and we have a deployment group job. The agent job is similar to running on a build pipeline where you're running all your tasks on the actual agent itself. The agentless job does not require any agent, or it may have certain targeted agents that we could leverage. And finally, the deployment group job, which can run on some or all of our target servers. Once we've created the stage, we can add pre-deployment or post-deployment conditions. The pre-deployment conditions can be found on the left side of the stage with the lightning bolt and person icons, while the post-deployment conditions can be added with the person icon to the right. Triggers include releases, stages, and manually triggered. Staged triggers, as shown on the image to the right, help us ensure all stages have completed before we continue. In this example, we have an acceptance test stage that waits until the integrations and systems test stages have completed. We can also add gates that allow us to have timed intervals so we can wait to defer the execution for a certain amount of time. For this demo of automating EasyRepro, we'll show how to create a release pipeline with various stages and types of test. Welcome to this demo of automating EasyRepro. For this demo, we will create a release pipeline. As you can see here, I've already navigated to my project and I've clicked on the releases button. I will now click on the new pipeline button here in the middle. And we'll be prompted by choosing various templates here. I'm simply just going to choose empty job. It's going to prompt me for a stage name. In this case, we will create a stage called integration test. What's nice here is that there's a button on this ellipsis that allows you to say this as a template. And you can do something like test stage and reuse this template across. So we'll go ahead and close that. We click on this one job, zero task here, but you see currently there's an agent job, but there's no task in here. So we'll go ahead and hit this plus sign, search for test here, and we can go ahead and run our VS test using test assemblies. Okay, you see before we have this test files box that we're going to need to update to, in the past we've changed it to sample to work with the EasyRepro sample unit test. Depending on what you name your DLL, you may want to change it. Here's an example I have here that shows maybe another idea we could use where we could use acceptance test, integration test, system test, whatever we want to name it. So we want to, change this to have that word. So in this case, we may say something like integration. And just, this is done here. We can save it. We can save our work in progress as we move along. And as in previous demos, you can see we have the settings files. We have the override test run parameters and all sorts of things we could do, test filter criteria, and so on. One thing to point out here is that we won't necessarily be building the test that we're running, our integration, our system, and our acceptance test based off of a build pipeline. So we may want to have to build those within the release task itself. So let's go ahead and add that task now. So we'll look for build. And we can drag this up here. And we can build our solution here. So if we had maybe a solution that contained the integration test, we could build it and then have the assemblies ready to work with. So that will be that one. We also have the ability to run deployment group and agentless jobs here. So maybe something like an agentless job, if we wanted to say we're running integration test. Let's see if we could drag this. Okay, there we go. So maybe invoke a function or something so we could maybe kind of prime up some of these integrations we'll be using inside of our test here. So we could do an Azure function, add URL keys, and so on here if we wanted to. So let's go ahead and disable that. All right, so now I've got my integration test task here finalized. So let's go back to pipeline and we'll add a new stage. Let's type in the word test. We have our template that we did here. Maybe call it something like system test. And go in and add the same test that we had before and the build task as well. And so this could all be tested here. You could maybe change this to system test or however you want to do it. But see, we're basically at this point, we're creating different stages that we can run for our integration test, our system test, and finally we'll have one for acceptance testing. And go through the same process here. Add, do a little test. Acceptance. So what's key here is that there's also some other options we can do with this with an agentless job, such as you can go ahead and add a message to publish a service bus, maybe saying that I'm done. If I had a connection here, I could add in. I could say something like, acceptance test have completed, and you could do something like add like the test run name and things like that. So there's that job there. So we kind of have this one set up. I'm going to go ahead and disable it for now. We can save it here. And maybe we'll give it some kind of name here. QA pipeline. Save. And this is a very basic test we have here. We have the 3 stages. We're going to add an artifact. Just take a build that we've done in the past. Oops. And add that. You can see you can do continuous deployment. So once that build pipeline completes, has the artifact ready, you can actually have that kick off here. Or we can base it off of a PR as well. See here we have pre-deployment conditions. You can have artifact filters, schedules, and PR deployments. What's neat here is that on these other stages, I can choose to only run after particular stages have completed. So in this case, integration, but maybe for acceptance, I want to show that maybe both of these stages had to complete before I go into the acceptance phase. One thing that's pretty neat about this is that we can also have these tasks run here in parallel, these stages run in parallel. So once I've finished my integration test, for instance, I can have system tests running, maybe some system tests that are based off configurations such as browser. So we have Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox. And once all of these have passed, we can go to acceptance. It's all about how you want to configure that here. Finally, on the post-deployment conditions, we have these gates, where if we wanted to, we could have delays, we could have deployment gates, where we could check compliance, invoke Azure functions, even do some query work items to make sure all the work items expected have been completed. There's no status changes, anything like that. Save that. You can see here when I go to the options, I have a general tab for description and the release name format, but the integrations part's pretty cool here, where I can report the deployment statuses to the boards, to even Jira, and then create a status badge of how the deployment went. See all of these, you can choose which stage you want to report for. Okay. And there's your pipeline variables as we've seen in the build pipelines. And finally here you can also, what's neat is that you can actually schedule a pipeline to kick off. So this might be helpful if I wanted to run maybe performance testing or any sort of regressions. I could actually schedule this on a certain time frame here, right? So however long we wanted to do it. Save that. So that pretty much covers this demo. Just keep in mind going forward for these jobs, they can have multiple tasks inside of them. And so if you wanted to, even this agentless job here, if I wanted to maybe do some integration testing that just does nothing but test my serverless functions, I could have that. So I don't necessarily have to have a stage that's just dedicated to, say, EasyRepro unit test. It could be a stage for the Azure functions or testing service bus or on-premise applications. So it could be whatever you wanted. Also, the Power Apps product group, the project checker, you could add that as well to do some code quality analysis as part of our release. That's it for this demo. Thank you. Finally, we'll leave with some references, including the EasyRepro GitHub repository and links to artifacts, triggers, stage triggers, deployment group jobs, and tasks. Thank you for watching this edition of the Test Automation and EasyRepro series. You can find my contact information in the slide here, as well as in the description below. Thanks.